Mr. Hasan Oti from the Telford Seventh-day Adventist Church to lead us in the prayers.
Let me extend a vote of thanks to the councillors and Councillor Raj Mehta from the Interfaith community for the invitation to start this meeting with prayer. Let us pray. Eternal, sovereign God, author and ruler, creator of liberty, tonight we put the meeting in your hands, and I pray for wisdom upon the councillors and all that are involved. We pray that you will guide, direct, and influence the motives of our councillors as they make decisions, agreements, steps forward for our community. We thank you for guiding us into this year, and we place every family represented here tonight. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Before we start, I would like to say that with agreement from all groups, we are running a pared-back meeting in light of the current situation with the pandemic, and due to the fact that we cannot legally hold meetings online at the moment. Could I also remind members that the microphones have already been calibrated, so please try not to touch them. Can I ask the Democratic Service Officers to confirm any apologies received in advance?
None, Speaker.
Can I ask the Democratic Services Officer to confirm any declarations of interest received in advance, please?
Councillor Sean Davies has declared an interest in relation to item 9 as the Council's nominee to the Wrekin Housing Group.
Thank you. Are there any declarations from the floor? Okay. To item 4, can I have a proposer to confirm the minutes from the previous meeting held on Thursday, 18th of November 2021, please? Thank you, Councillor Davis, and thank you, Councillor. Okay, item 5, leaders' reports and announcements. I will now invite Councillor Sean Davis to address the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and a happy new year to all members and their families and all council officers too. I'm going to keep my remarks brief, given the fact that we have scaled back this evening's meeting due to the current circumstances. I want to focus my remarks upon the budget consultation, which is now live, and to encourage as many residents as possible to get involved in that consultation. We are probably the only council in the country to be proposing a 0% council tax rise on our general council tax element, not just for this year, but next year too. And in line with every council up and down the country who have responsibility for adult social care, a recommendation that the government's adult social care precept should be increased by 1%, with every penny of that money being ring-fenced for adult social care. But despite having the lowest council tax in the Midlands for the 10th consecutive year, I know just how difficult the council tax bill is to pay. For many households, including mine, the council tax bill is the second largest bill that leaves your bank account each and every month after your rent and your mortgage, or your mortgage. But for many residents, understanding the details of the council tax bill is not something that necessarily you look at. You look at how much is coming out your bank account each month. But we all know, as members, that the council tax is made up of numerous precepts. The first one, of course, is the adult social care precept levy that's been imposed upon all councils. The other is the general council tax position for the borough, and I've already outlined that. But there is also others. There's the parish and town councils, there is the fire authority, and there is the Police and Crime Commissioner. And I do appeal on behalf of all of our residents who are finding things pretty tough at the moment, with the rising cost of energy, the rising cost of food and fuel, and the rising cost of the general inflation, together with the national taxation increases in April, the national insurance contributions going up, which will see every employer and employee paying more money in national insurance, together with the freezing of the personal tax allowances, which will see more people paying more money in real terms on income tax, and actually seeing 1.2 million people up and down the country being dragged into the higher tax rate. The parish and town councils, the Fire Authority and the Police and Crime Commissioner must show restraint and discipline in the same way that we are. And I would like to congratulate those parish and town councils that have already come out to freeze or to reduce their precepts, and also to encourage those that haven't made that decision yet to do so. And also, I'd like to appeal on behalf of our residents here in Telford Wrekin to the Police and Crime Commissioner. He has seen his element of the council tax bill increase by up to 10% in 1 year over the last few years, around 25% increase over the last 5 years. And I do think it's important that he understands the impact that that will have, particularly at a time when he is employing a Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner earning £51,000 and 2 Assistant Police and Crime Commissioners earning circa £35,000. That we don't want Assistant and Deputy Police and Crime Commissioners, we want to see police on our beat. And I ask him to withdraw his proposals to increase council tax for the residents of Telford Wrekin by 4%. And I do hope that members of the Police and Crime, the Fire Authority, will also show similar discipline in setting their precept. In April of this year, the tax burden for our residents and families will be at all-time high, only being matched by the figures in the 1950s after the Second World War. Coupled with inflation and rising costs, it's imperative that we all do our bit to help our residents in the next year or so, and this council is doing that. I do hope that residents will respond to the consultation and that parish and town councils, the Police and Crime Commissioner and the Fire Authority will follow our lead.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Moving on to the Mayor's announcements, item 6 on the agenda. I now hand over to Mayor Councillor Amric Jawar.
Thank you. First, I would like to start by taking the opportunity to wish members a Happy New Year, and I hope you all manage to enjoy a restful festive break. It's a pleasure to welcome you all back here today to our first council meeting of the year. I would like to ask members to note the engagements undertaken since the last council meeting and those forthcoming engagements and events shown on the list circulated to the members. Unfortunately, due to the ongoing pandemic, a number of my engagements prior to the Christmas period has been cancelled. However, I would like to thank my Deputy Councillor Raj Mehta for attending the Maidley Town Christmas Lights Switch On and the Carol event hosted by the Rodington Parish Council, 2 wonderful events to celebrate the start of the festive season. Members may be aware that in January each year, the Council hosts a Holocaust Memorial Day. The significant online event will be held on the Thursday, 27th January, and will provide an opportunity for everyone to come together to remember. I would like to ask members to look out for further information on this event and take time during this period to reflect. I would like to finish by saying that I'm looking forward to continuing the remainder of my term in office as Mayor, supporting our residents and local community and attending future engagements. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jawar. We now move to item 7, public questions, and I can confirm that none have been submitted for this meeting. Next, we move on to item 8. We have 4 questions in total, so I'd like to remind members that the questions have been circulated in advance and tabled and are also shown on the screen. Also, questions were tabled prior to the decision to reduce attendance, and so where a member who has a question on the agenda is not in attendance, a colleague will be invited to ask that question on their behalf. Finally, I remind members that there is a total of 30 minutes allocated to this item. I wish to invite Councillor Chris Turley to ask his question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am delighted that Telford Wrekin Council continues to support its servicemen and women and takes its Armed Forces Covenant role seriously, and welcome the Calm CAF recently set up for veterans, which I attended at Randley House in Dorley on Monday. I understand that Telford and Wrekin Council's leader, Sean Davis, together with other council leaders, recently joined the call by Dan Jarvis and Johnny Mercer, MP, to lobby government to scrap visa fees for service personnel and their families, which could run to nearly $10,000 for a family of 4. I understand also that Councillor Sean Davis wrote to both Telford and Wrekin MPs asking them to support this amendment to the Nationality and Borders Bill, which came before Parliament in December. Our country has long benefited from the sacrifices made by soldiers, sailors and airmen who travel across the globe to protect us, and it was therefore extremely disappointing to hear that the government defeated the amendment put by Dan Jarvis MP and Johnny Mercer MP. In view of this, I would be grateful if Councillor Davies could please inform Council if our MPs heeded the leader's call and supported this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Turley, and thank you for all that you do here in Telford Wrekin to support our military and veteran community in your role as Chairman of the Military Covenant Committee. I'm immensely proud of the fact that we are one of only a small number of organisations here in the country to have a gold accreditation for the work that we do around the Military Covenant, and it's something that we are proud to continue to do. In particular, the reference you've made to Commonwealth veterans and the visa charges that they are required to pay received cross-party condemnation, in fact, at a recent council meeting, and I undertook to write to members of Parliament in regard to that. Members will be aware that Johnny Mercer is a Conservative Member of Parliament, together with Labour's Dan Jarvis, moved the amendment, which would mean that Commonwealth soldiers who have served this country bravely around the world, putting their lives on the line, would not have to pay to remain in this country. And I was horrified that the government opposed that amendment, and I was equally disappointed that both members of Parliament, despite positive noises that they both made in public, decided to not support that amendment. And I do wonder whether or not there is a merit for us as a council on a cross-party basis to write to both our MPs to make the position very clear that this council believes that if you serve your country, you shouldn't have to pay to stay.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Turley?
No, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor McClements has submitted a question, but she's not in attendance, so can I invite Councillor Bob Wennington to ask the question on her behalf, please?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. COVID-19 has already caused enormous impact on our children's education, and the government must act urgently to make our schools across Telford and Wrekin as COVID secure as possible. However, I'm disappointed to hear that only 7,000 much-needed air filtration devices have been made available by the government. With 300,000 classrooms in England alone, this is just really a drop in the ocean. I welcome the Cabinet Member for Education's strong and robust representation to the Secretary of State for Education on behalf of schools across Telford and Wrekin. I wonder if she could give us an update on any progress that has been made on this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Wellington, for your question. And can I take this opportunity to welcome you to your very first council meeting after your successful election in December. The Department of Education's offer of only 7,000 units for over 300,000 classrooms in England is woeful. In Telford and Wrekin, I am not aware of any schools or educational settings that have benefited from the scheme to date. And they have reported to us that they do not feel they are even going to qualify under the strict criteria that has been applied. For a school or setting to qualify, they will need to monitor the classrooms using CO2 monitors and then demonstrate that there is a prolonged period of high CO2 emissions. Further to this, they will then also need to show that they have plans for the building works to rectify any issues with ventilation afterwards. Sadly, as I'm sure you all realise, our schools and settings simply just do not have the time to even do this. They are rightly focused on the most important task of keeping the schools open and providing high-quality teaching and learning to all of our youngsters. Practical guidance from schools does not extend much further than advising staff to open the windows. The government's pilot of air purifiers in Bradford schools is not expected to even provide its full report until October 22. Not very helpful for this winter then. The Labour Party's analysis of figures from the House of Commons Library has revealed that increases in electricity and gas prices could send school energy costs soaring by up to 80 million. That is without accounting for the open windows. Winter temperatures will be plummeting and many schools will be left with no choice but to endure cold classrooms and rocketing energy bills. We are aware that some of our schools have decided to take matters into their own hands and they will be purchasing some units themselves. This will cause yet another strain on their very limited education budgets and will take money away from what matters, which is the education of our children.
Thank you. Is there a supplementary question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thank you. I'd like to ask Councillor Reynolds if she knows whether or not our two MPs, Lucy Allen and Mark Pritchard, have been lobbying the government on behalf of our schools.
Thank you. I know what I have been doing. Last week, I wrote to the Secretary of State for Education and I urged him to consider this matter with some great urgency and also to reconsider the current inadequate offer. Disappointingly, I've not even had an acknowledgement to my letter. Letter is here to show that it is gone. This afternoon, I had a meeting with the Shadow Schools Minister regarding the challenges facing our schools because of COVID. I will continue to press for all the help and support possible for our schools, but I'm saddened to say that neither of the Telford and Wrekin MPs, Lucy Allen or Mark Pritchard, have been seen to be taking any action at all on this issue, and they have not been lobbying for this on behalf of our school staff and the thousands of children across the borough. It might just be they're slightly too engaged with other things at the moment. It seems our government has taken its eye off the ball. It is too busy working out what constitutes a work meeting, never mind doing the work that should go on within one.
I wish to invite Councillor Nigel Dugmore to ask his question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Will the Council consider switching off selected traffic signals overnight?
I can answer that question. We already actively consider the application of part-time signals on a case-by-case basis. There are examples of where this happens currently within the borough. Our primary consideration is safety, and therefore it's not always appropriate in some locations and some instances. If you have specific examples that you would like us to consider, I'm more than happy to take those on board and ask the team to look at them.
Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. I can certainly give you some examples, and do you agree that it would actually fit in with the climate change agenda that the Council is pursuing?
As I said, we actively consider this on a case-by-case basis. There are instances where we do it. That primary consideration is safety, though, and that always must be our abiding concern, particularly where pedestrian crossings are integrated into some of these signals. As I say, if you want to give me some of those examples, though, we will look at those and see what can be done.
Thank you. I wish to invite Councillor Nigel Dugmore to ask his next question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can the Cabinet member confirm that the recommended council tax increase ring-fenced for social care provision of 1% for the year 2022-23 is discretionary?
Council, you will recall that the adult social care precept was introduced in 2015 when this government decided that they wouldn't make desperately needed funding available to councils to deliver statutory adult social care services. Indeed, they thought local residents should shoulder the costs directly via their council tax, despite receiving no equivalent reduction to their taxes, which they pay directly to the government, central government. With regard to next year, in both the comprehensive spending review announced in October and the provisional local government finance settlement announced in December, the government have assumed that councils will apply the 1% adult social care precept for next year. Unfortunately, given the long-term failure of government to adequately fund the escalating pressures within the adult social care services, the spiralling costs faced by us and the other councils, we have no real choice other than to apply the government's 1% precept. Even doing this, the 1% will only generate less than 16% of the nearly 5 million that we will have to increase the adult social care budget by next year.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Moore?
Yes, I do, Madam Speaker. So I'll take that as a yes then. So will you ensure that the Council's public communications make this clear to residents?
Thank you, Councillor Dugmore. I think that's a fair point, and indeed I believe that we already do.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. We now move on to item 9, Cabinet decisions made since the last meeting of the Council. I would remind members that these should be questions of clarity only on those items marked as key decisions on the report. Are there any questions of clarification, not debate, from the members? Councillor Dugmore.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. On the 2.1.1, the first home scheme, the Cabinet report and verbal comments at the Cabinet meeting were unsupportive of this compulsory government scheme, which enables low-income and essential service personnel to get on the property ladder by purchasing discounted new homes. Is the Cabinet supportive of this scheme?
Thank you, Councillor Dugmore. Of course, we are implementing the scheme because the government has told councils to implement this first homes scheme. We have extended the local criteria to make sure that the scheme locally in Telford and Wrekin will meet more people. But sadly, in our opinion, it doesn't go far enough.
Are there any other questions of clarification? Councillor Dugmore.
Yeah. 2.2.1, with a projected overspend and with a projected excess of £3 million in the current financial year, what would the deficit have been without the £15 million of government code grants? Is that 12 million deficit?
Councillor Dugmore, that money that the government has given us simply replaced what we had to spend. So, in effect, you can take it out of the equation. The money is carefully managed by both the Cabinet and by the officers, and there would be the same outcome as there is now.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. We now move on to item 10. I would like to invite Councillor Ray Evans to propose the recommendation.
Council, in order to determine the appropriate council tax levels for the area, it's necessary for council to determine the council tax base for its area or part of the area. The budget requirements of the various precepting authorities are divided by this figure to arrive at the Band D equivalent level of council tax that we so often hear about. The tax base for 22-23 must be set by full council as prescribed by legislation. You are therefore asked to approve the recommendations at section 2 of the report.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? Okay. The legislation sets out that there should be a recorded vote for this item. I will ask the monitoring officer to take the recorded vote. Please can you indicate your vote when your name is called?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Councillor Bentley. As you wish, Councillor Bentley. Councillor Lee Carter. Councillor Davies. Councillor Dugmore. Councillor Eade. Councillor England. Councillor Evans. Councillor Healy. Councillor Holt. Councillor Hoskin. Councillor Dwyer. Councillor Lawrence. Councillor Middleton. Councillor Overton. Councillor Shirley Reynolds. Councillor Scott. Councillor Tomlinson. Councillor Turley. Councillor Watling. Councillor Wennington. Councillor Bentley. That's 20 votes in favour, Madam Speaker. It's carried.
Thank you. We now move on to item 11.1. I would like to invite Councillor Ray Evans to propose the recommendations.
Formally moved, Madam Speaker.
Are there any questions or comments? Can I have a show of hands in favour of the proposals, please? Can I have a show of hands against? And are there any abstentions? That's carried. We now move on to item 12. I would like to invite Councillor Ray Evans to propose the recommendations.
Love this time of year. Oh, well, yeah, thank you. That's very rude of you. Council, this report details a number of things. Hopefully most of them are self-explanatory. The first item relates to the ongoing reasons for absence for COVID that was first approved in May 20. It is recommended that the Council approves a further period of 12 months during which members can seek a leave of absence. The second item relates to 2 leaves of absence requests for health reasons from Councillor Kiernan and Councillor Loveridge. Details are contained in the report, and I would ask members to approve a leave of absence for up to 6 months for both members. The third item for noting sets out the new Cabinet's responsibilities following Councillor Wright's decision to step down from his Cabinet role. At this point, I would like to pause to offer my thanks to Councillor David Wright for his contribution to the Cabinet and for his support through the last few years. Points 4.7 to 4.10 of the report relate to the calculation of the political balance of the authority following changes in group membership. The final item is to note, and that relates to the proposals to give the Council an opportunity to create honorary aldermen. It is intended that, in or around April, there will be a special meeting at which the title of honorary alderman can be bestowed. Each group will, of course, have an opportunity to nominate candidates to be awarded this honour. Council, I ask you to note or approve the recommendations at section 2 of this report.
Thank you. Thank you. Before I take questions or comments, I just want to confirm that I have received a request to take the recommendations separately with items 2.1 to 2.3 and 2.5 taken en bloc. I'm happy to agree to that request. Now, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Dugmore.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I mean, the only thing that we don't agree with is 2.4, which is the allocation of seats. Committee seats should be allocated to groups and not individuals. There has been there's already been precedent set when we had a single individual who was an independent councillor, and they were allocated no committee seats. I mean, we've got nothing against any individual. This is a point of principle, and it's the interpretation of the legislation. We are taking our advice on that, and we don't agree with this allocation.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Would Richard like to speak, Councillor?
I'd just like to say that, you know, unfortunately, that these figures have been calculated by the monitoring officer and the staff, and we should support them because basically member representation is important. People are elected to that position, and maybe Nigel needs to understand why his member was ejected from his group.
Thank you, Councillor Overton. Is there any others? Okay. In respect of recommendations 2.1 to 2.3 and 2.5, can I have a show of hands in favour of the proposal, please?
That's unanimous, Madam Speaker.
That's carried. That's unanimous. Thank you. In respect to recommendation 2.4, can I have a show of hands in favour of the proposals, please? All those against? That's carried. Thank you. Item 13 on the agenda is a notice of motion. It has been agreed by all groups that due to the reduced nature of this meeting, the motion will be withdrawn. Thank you all for attending. The next full council meeting will be 3rd of March 2022 here at the Place, Oakengates. The meeting is now closed.